Okay, so one of the most difficult things about preparing a shiur, there's like the sources and the ideas, but then sometimes the structure is the hardest part of the shiur, and I really don't feel secure in the structure of the shiur. Okay, so I'm going to explain what I'm going to do, and the reason why this is on a PowerPoint is because this is a mashup of two old shiurim and one new shiur. Okay, so the code is, and I think this is going to take 2 weeks. Okay, so the code is blue is the new stuff. Red is one of the old shiurim, and green is another one of the old shiurim. So we're going to start off by reading Oren's and Chaim's questions that they submitted, which is what spawned the shiur. Then we're going to review the basics of Tefilah, which I think we've already done this year, but I'm pretty convinced that either I'm misunderstanding something in your questions or just going over the basics is just going to automatically answer the questions. Okay. So, and if that's the case, then like, that's not a failure. It's just like, whatever.
So
okay.
When are you taking questions?
In my discussion group.
Oh,
yeah. Well, actually, I think it was asked live. I think you asked this live in my, before shiur when you were before the break or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Then another part of the new shiur is we're going to retranslate and ask questions on Shema Koleinu. Okay. Because Oren, for some reason, which I don't know if I understand, phrased this question in terms of Shema Koleinu. Okay. And so I figured this would be a good opportunity to review Shema Koleinu or go through Shema Koleinu. Okay. Then I gave it a shiur probably to Ayala at some point in Shalhevet on what it means for Hashem to hear Tefilah and to answer Tefilah. Okay. And that I feel like is going to touch upon our analysis of Shema Koleinu and on Oren's question, I think, if I understand his question right. Then we're going to actually learn through Shema Koleinu with the Mefarshim. Which I also is part of the new shiur, and then we're going to go wherever else the analysis takes us. Okay, so that's the sketch of the plan. This is a messy structure of a shiur, but it'll be masked by the seeming organization of the PowerPoint. Okay, so hopefully it'll be a win-win situation. Okay, so Oren submitted the following question: how does one square the quote davening as internal judging introspection meditation end quote approach with the bracha of Shema Koleinu? One would need to interpret the bracha in light of the approach, but how does one do that when the bracha seems so explicitly in favor of the common, but philosophically fraught, davening as plea approach without bending over backwards to make the approach work? Condensed, what does the bracha of Shema Koleinu mean such that it means something introspective and not a request? Okay, so that's it's more like a burrito of a question with lots of stuff in it that I can't quite see where, than a sandwich. But burritos are good though. So I guess here's the part I understand. Okay. One thing I understand here is like, how does asking for stuff work if davening is introspection? Okay. That's like a core thing of what we're going to address tonight. Okay. What I don't understand about the question, which is why I'm glad you're here to answer this, is is this only a question on Shema Koleinu, or is this a question on all requests?
Should I answer?
Yeah.
I think it's a question on all requests.
Yeah.
How does it work? But then Shema Koleinu, I think, makes it very explicit that God is listening to us and we want him to answer us.
Okay, I see.
So whatever answer you're going to
give, okay, that's okay. Now I see why.
All
right, now I see why you're wording it the way you worded it. So let me just state that back, make sure I understand it. Is that, Oren's walking in with the premise that like there's a problem with asking God for stuff, which we're going to discuss, right? But given that premise, he's saying you can kind of like, as the expression goes, shoehorn in answers for the other requests, because in the other requests, you don't actually ask Hashem to answer your tefillos. But here, that's all you're doing. Okay, so the question does apply to other brachos, but it's unavoidable here, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Just another in terms of Tefilah in general.
Yeah.
In any request, I remember you gave Friday night. Here you spoke here about Tefilah, like supposed to about requesting things and like. It seems like you were saying that it was just like a matter of like introspection in terms of like what's like the best possible way to go about this in terms of your own personal relationship with this. All
right, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to review.
Is that the same thing?
I think that's what Oren is alluding to when he says internal judging, introspective meditation. But again, we're going to review that thoroughly. Okay. So
and then it's not just this.
Right. Yeah, that applies to. Yeah. Okay. So then Chaim chimed in and said, so to follow up with what Oren is asking, how do self-judgment and request work together? What I've thought it to be is that we're supposed to judge and introspect on our requests themselves to make sure they're in line with what's correct to ask for. Okay, so that's just asking for further clarification of how bakasha fits into lihis pala. Okay, so anyone have any other questions they want to get on the table about the general? So the general sugya for those who came in late is the general topic is going to be Hashem answering Tefilah and us asking for stuff. So anything under that umbrella is fair game. Yeah.
So I feel like we talked sometime recently about the idea of Hashem's good being like, water flowing from a faucet and you changing yourself.
We're going to go back to that also. Yeah.
And how does that work with requests?
Okay.
Kind of is pretty much.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right, good. So this is going to tie into I think we talked about that twice. We talked about it first in terms of our shiurim on Baruch Atah Hashem, or Baruch, and then we also most recently talked about it in the shiur about God davening to himself. Chas v'shalom, yeah.
Like, I understand that analogy.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why this bracha is specifically so important. I feel like that analogy doesn't work here.
Okay, good. So this is now making me very confident in my decision to review the basics first, because we have been here for Tefilah shiurim, but who knows who else is going to listen to this, and we'll make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so I'm going to do what I did before, which is review this pretty fast because we have been through this before. But stop me if something is, if you have a question or if you want to dwell on something. Also, I want to mention in terms of, I'm just realizing this point now. There's two types of methodologies that one can use in learning a topic that you frequently encounter. Okay, one approach is try to approach it fresh every time, like we do in a Mishlei pasuk. Like no matter what Mishlei pasuk we're learning, I'll try to approach it as fresh as possible. Okay, the other approach is as you develop a certain like way of thinking about the area, then every time, every time you revisit it, start from the ground up and go through all the steps. Okay, so I'm not just doing this for the sake of like people in the shiur. I'm doing this for my own sake, like, because what'll happen is you'll see glaring questions that you just never noticed before. That's the spoiler alert. That's the subject of my article that I'm publishing tomorrow. This is just again an example of this. This is a commercial break. Miriam, was she a prophetess? Yes, right. Okay. The question is, how do you know? Okay, so what if I told you that not everyone learns that means that she prophesied? Okay, yeah, okay, right. So the punchline of my article is that it pays to ask even the basic questions and to go through the review from the bottom and ask, how do I know that this is the case, even if you have been operating with the idea for a while? Okay, so what is Tefilah? Okay, so I'm going to go through this really fast, right? So we have Litpal does not mean to pray. The English word pray comes from prekare. Oh, the other reason why we're going over this is that you can tell it over to other people, right? The more we go over this, the more fluently it'll be on your Vishinan Tam Levanecha, right? Is you should learn it to the point where it's clear. You don't have to mumble to reconstruct the idea, right? So pray comes from prekare, which means to ask earnestly. We do ask earnestly, but that's not the essence of Tefilah to us. So our prayer comes from Pei Lamed Lamed. Pei Lamed Lamed, I'm going to give you two definitions. One is based on my own understanding. The other is based on the Otzar Tefilos, okay? So Pei Lamed Lamed means to judge. Here are a bunch of examples. In Berashit 48:11, it says, Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef rofanecha lo filati. This is when Yisrael is united with Yosef, and he says, I did not pilalti to see your face. Okay, so Rashbam says, Lo danti belibi. I did not judge in my mind, like I didn't, conclude that I would ever see your face again. And he says, Kol pilu lashon din. Okay, so in case there are some people who want to say that it can mean din, but in lehit palel it means something else. So just bust out your pocket Rashbam and say no. Kol, according to Rashbam, kol pilu lashon din. That's just a pocket. Okay. All right. Radak says, "Klomer lo danti ba'atzmi." I did not judge myself. V'lo chashavti she'erech od. I did not think that I would see you again. Ki chashavti she'at hames, because I thought you were dead. Okay, same thing. All right. Another example is in Devarim 32-31. Ki lo kitzuri and suram v'ivinu plilim. This is in Hazino. For our, not like our rock is their rock, and our enemies are plilim. Anklos says, "Ubali devavana havo dayanana." our enemies are judges. Rashi says, so they judge us. Our rock is given us to them. One more example, Shemos in Mishpatim, V'nasim b'Plilim, he shall give it by the order of the Plilim. Ramban says, V'nasim b'Plilim, in Plilim ela dayanim. Okay, again, judge. And Ralbag says, Plilim is Harotam bo dayanim. Yeah, Ali?
So how would that differ from the translation of Shoftim?
Okay, good. Okay, so this is why you need people other than my own intuition. Okay, which is the Osar Tefilah, which is the second definition we're going to go into, is going to explain what makes pilalti unique as a judgy word. Is that what you're asking? Like why do we use that phrase other than Shoftim?
Right, unless Shoftim is like a literal judge, like a person who's been.
Right. So there are, I guess, we've seen 3 words so far in the Mefarshim for judge. There's din, shafat, and palal, right? So the question is going to be, what's the difference between the 3? And I don't know if I can answer all of them, but we will distinguish plilim. Okay. All right. So that's pilel is to judge. This is in hitpael, right? Lehitpalel is reflexive, which means to judge yourself, which raises the question, how can you be lehitpalel lashem? How can you judge yourself to Hashem? So my understanding is you're judging yourself in Hashem's framework, which means his value system, which if you want to know what his value system is, then learn Torah. Okay. But the reason why I'm saying judging yourself in Hashem's framework is you could judge yourself in many frameworks. You could judge yourself by your own emotional, psychological, subjective standards, by American value system, Western standards, by legal standards. Okay. But this is by Hashem's standards. Okay. So that's essentially what the activity of Hispalel Hashem is. Okay, definition 2, and this is where we're going to answer your question, Ali. Okay, so the Otzar Tefilos, I never know, the Siddur Otzar Tefilos has different pirushim in it, and this is the Avodas Halev, and I don't know who wrote the Avodas Halev. So he says, V'asher yir li bazeh ki hashorsh pilel hunach b'tchila lahoras birur machshavos ha'olos al halev bi'irbuvia v'havdalas machshava achas mibein chavrosaha. Very clear definition, okay, is that pilel means the clarification of thoughts that arise in the mind or the heart in a state of confusion and the separation of one thought from among the rest. If you could think of one good English word for that captures all of that in one, then I'll like that. Yeah.
Clarity.
So clarifying is actually probably a pretty good word, right? Clarifying thoughts, because clarifying, when you say I need to clarify my thoughts, that points to the fact that there's lack of clarity, and it also points to the fact that that the goal is to emerge with one conclusion that's clear. All right, so you win. Yeah. Okay, so clarification. Yeah.
Whittling your thoughts.
Whittling. Well, for woodworkers, then that's probably a better thing. But yeah, no, but I think it's actually not good because whittling does not involve a mixture. Whittling involves raw material that you're shaping.
Winnowing.
Winnowing is closer than whittling because winnowing you have chaff and wheat. Yeah, Ali?
So how does this understanding?
You want to just list all the 39 malachos? Yeah, what? What was it?
How does this understanding have anything to do with judging, or is it like a view?
Thankfully, he's going to walk us through that. Okay, yeah.
So concretizing.
Concretizing is also good, but concretize to me primarily means taking something abstract and rendering it particular, which might be a form of clarification, but it's not the only one. Yeah.
Prioritizing.
Okay, prioritizing is one objective in gaining clarity, right? But it's not the only one. For example, the thing you are unclear about is the relative importance of stuff. And then in that case, Lihit Palel would be prioritizing, right? But sometimes it could be like, I don't know what my needs are even, right? And there I wouldn't say I'm trying to prioritize. I'm saying I would try to identify, So prioritizing would fit under this, but clarification so far is the best contender. Okay, good English.
The first word from the...
Oh yes, but very good. You can read as well. Okay, even bonus. Yeah, no, but it truthfully it is good. It is a good word to summarize the whole thing. Yeah, Yeshua?
I would just clarify that a tiny bit by saying clarify, because it's the outcome of the thoughts. It's not necessarily, is it the process or is it the outcome? Right, it's saying that arise in the mind. Right. So it is the process. It's the process in order to get the outcome. Like I think you're referring to both, because judging is like, if you think, let's say like normal judging, you say like this judge is judging the case. You are referring both to a thought process and a verdict, arriving at a verdict or a pronouncement. Yeah. Okay. So then he goes on and he says the same pasuk, but he explains it differently. He says, "V'yomer Yisrael Yosef, Yisrael said to Yosef, I didn't filalti to see your face. So lo shafatati v'lo sha'arti liros panecha
Sorry. I got to put brackets here. Means lo shafatati v'lo sha'arti l'ros panecha. I did not judge it to be so, or I did not consider it likely that I would see your face. Okay, but then he says the ilu amar lo chashavti. If he had said I didn't think I would see your face, or lo damisi, I didn't imagine I would see your face, or lo also alibi, or it didn't occur to me that I would have seen your face. Hayisi Omer, I would have said that Yaakov had given up hope completely, and that he had erased Yosef's memory from his mind and forgotten him. So that would have been an absolute thing. Like if he said, I didn't think I'd ever see you again, that means that he was under the impression that Yosef was dead. But instead, he uses this weird word, lo filalti, to see your face. So what does that mean? It says, that's not the truth. He refused to be consoled. Because you cannot receive consolation over someone who's alive. Now I know sidebar here. I know there are people who think that means that like as long as the person is still alive, then like somehow like magically like you're not going to be consoled about it. I don't think that's what it means. I think it means that if you don't see for sure and have absolute knowledge that the person is dead, you will not have closure, and that's going to make you inconsolable. You won't be able to fully like come to terms with that. So that's non-mystical understanding. So he says lifamim, and so he brings a proof. How do we know that Yosef, the Yaakov was in conflict? So lifamim haya omer. Sometimes he would say Yosef and Nenu. Yosef isn't here. V'lo amar meis, and he didn't say Yosef died. So that shows that he was not sure that he died. Okay, part of him wasn't sure. Mizin. Now here's the important part. From here, it is apparent that different thoughts were wrestling in his mind or his heart. But he didn't know how to decide. Therefore, he said, I didn't pilati. Now I'm not liking clarification as much. I do like clarification, but I want a word that has clarification with the implication of arriving at a conclusion, like pronouncement or like an ultimate conclusion. You're going to ask your friend?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because it's called an addiction. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about ChatGPT in case anyone's wondering. Yeah. Dependency. Loyalty. Okay. Yeah. All right. So the Avodas Halev is saying that Pilel is slightly different than what I said, which is he's saying it's not to judge I was saying like in a stam way. He's saying it's to remove confusion from our thoughts and arrive at a clear conclusion. Okay. All right, but then he goes on and explains, so now the question is, what does this have to do with davening? And this is the thing that I think is going to answer your questions more than my basic idea answers them. Okay, so he says like this, and bonus points is he's going to link it up to Isaiah's question as well. Okay, in explicit terms. Why is tefillah always in reflexive? Which indicates that you're doing the action to yourself. Okay, again, here's the same question that I raised. It's weird that it's reflexive. You're not davening to yourself, right? Answer: because tefillah does not cause a change or an alteration in Hashem's will. Okay. I wonder if this is supposed to be his Allah according to my theory. Okay. L'shanoso l'tov ba'ad hamispala, to change it to good on behalf of the davener. Ki Hashem Yisrael nale umuramam al kol shinui u'temura. God is exalted above all change and alteration. Shneimar, as it says, Ani Hashem lo shanisi. I am Hashem, I do not change. In Malachi 3:6. That's what the Rambam quotes also for that. So just, was it?
It's a good pasuk.
It is a great pasuk. In all honesty, though, if you look at the pasuk in context, a person can make an argument that it doesn't mean that. That it means that Hashem will not change his promise or his will. But I mean, you have a lot of Rishonim on your side who backed up to say this as like an independent philosophical statement that God doesn't change. And also, you don't need a pasuk to prove that God doesn't change, because if God changes, then there's a lot of other problems as well. Like he would either have to be, well, he would have to be in time, right? That's one of the things Ron mentions. He would have to not be one, because in order for something to change, you have to have an essence and accidents. So for example, if an apple is turning from green to red, you have the substance of the apple and you have its color. And the substance doesn't change, the color changes. So anytime you talk about change, then the entity you're speaking of has to be a composite, and God is not a composite. You would also have the question of what could cause him to change. And you say he's going to cause himself to change, then you also run into composites. So you don't need a pasuk, but it's nice. It's always nice when the Nevi'im say, like like when Moshe Rabbeinu said at one time, Hashem Echad. I think we'd have a lot of problems if we didn't have an explicit pasuk that said that. So it definitely helps. Okay, so just to give an example of the wrong idea. So when you ask a human being for something, your mom says, no, you can't. And then you say, please, please, please. And then she has a change of heart and says, okay, you can, then you're trying to evoke a change in the other person. With Hashem, that's off the table. Okay. So what are you doing? So he says, okay, it is causing a change and an alteration in the soul of the davener when he gives over his heart and thoughts to his creator. Okay. And I don't know how much to read into that phrase, that turn of phrase, when he's giving over his heart and thoughts into his creator. I'm only noticing that for the first time now. So let's put that on the ledge, okay, or the front burner. Yeah.
Would you feel comfortable saying machshava here in the same way that you've used it in like Hilchos Tshuva?
Like practical thinking?
Like plans?
Plans, yes, I would feel comfortable with that. I don't feel as comfortable saying that he means that because when I've mentioned it in the past, I've shown that the Rambam uses it that way. But I don't think it's Tanakh also uses that way. So I am comfortable. And then he says, what? He says, and through this, when your tefillah is proper, then there will be change and alteration in your situation, okay, in the situation of the person. Why? And now he goes to the point that Isaiah brought up. God is always ready and prepared to benefit his creatures, his people here. I think that's why I translate as people, because animals don't walk in God's ways. Okay, but his people walk in God's ways. V'kach bara saloma. That's how God created his world. Ella shehem hayu ma'akvim b'benosam chitz b'maasehem v'darchehem habilti ritzuyim beinam levein tovas boram. A beautiful phrasing here. It is they, the people, us, we, who block God's goodness by building a barrier through our actions and our undesirable ways between ourselves and our Creator. Like the pasuk says that the Rambam always quotes from Philin the Navi, I don't know which one it is. Avonosem mavdilim beinechem ubein elokechem. Your avonos, your iniquities, your imperfections separate between you and your God. Okay. Uvahasiram es hachitz hazeh al yidei tefillah mimela yuchshru al hatov. And once you remove this barrier through tefillah, you automatically become disposed towards the good. Or huchshar, ready to receive the good. Ba'ofen shehamispalel poel ba'atzmo ulas romumus madregas hanefesh v'kishron kabbalas hatov. Chef's kiss. I can't do a chef's kiss, evidently. Such that the davener affects change in himself, causing his soul's level to ascend, thereby preparing him to receive the good. Okay, so that is the mechanism of tefillah. And in my summary here, so what is lispalel Hashem is to change yourself by engaging in the thought clarification process of tefillah, thereby rendering oneself worthy of receiving the good that constantly flows from Hashem. Okay, now, armed with these two understandings, let's go back to the questions, okay, and see what we can and can't answer. Okay, so Oren's question, and let's tackle the broader question now, not with the Shema Koleinu specifically, but so how does one square the davening as internal judging, introspection, meditation approach with the bracha of Shema Koleinu? One would need to interpret the bracha in light of the approach, but how does one do that when the bracha seems so explicitly in favor of the common but philosophically fraught davening as plea approach without bending over backwards to make the approach work? Or what does the bracha of Shema Koleinu mean such that it means something introspective and not a request? And then actually it might make more sense to start with Chaim's question. How do self-judgment and request work together? Let's start with that. I think that's, and then zoom in. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've thought about this a lot.
Okay, good. Yeah.
It's a bit like I'm saying there, to make sure that your requests are in line with what is correct. This is based on like the Rashba.
Yeah.
That we did with the Pesach last year.
Yeah.
Along those lines, but not only to make sure that the requests are like that, but to by consistently and constantly going over those ideas and saying these are things that I should be looking for, these are things that I should be asking for. Yeah, it means that these are things that I should be doing for, basically.
Right.
Like, yeah. It when you realize that these are things that I'm supposed to be wanting and asking for, then it means that these are, and the way to get those things is by changing myself. Then just simply thinking about it isn't what's going to change it. It's changing your actions.
Exactly.
That now I'm living in a way that God's gonna give me refuah, right?
Right.
When I get sick, I take medicine. I don't just lay in bed and do nothing.
Right.
I eat food and I move around. You know?
Right.
And I don't know, like we want Eretz Yisrael, so like basically all those things. And it's basically through going through that rigorous, like if you want to call it meditation or self, reflection, then you also come to changing your actions in a way that now you're living in line with God's will, which is gonna memela as that rabbi said. Make you a beneficiary of the good of God.
Right. And I'm only just going to add one note to that because the Avodas Haleva says this, is that's how God set up his world. Is that let's take refuah, right? So what do we mean when we say rofei chol basar mafli lasos in asher yatzar? We mean that God created the human body with an immune system and with bodily systems that if you are, conducting yourself properly, then like they will, it works, right? Now, again, we're not getting into like guarantees and particulars here, but I'm saying like, generally speaking, God set up the world in a way, again, I know I've said this like a billion times, but it's the best mashal, right? That you know what I'm saying? The cakes, the cakes, right? That if you take flour and water and eggs and butter and oil and whatever, and you mix them together and you put them in an oven, then a cake will pop out, right? God created a world where if you do these steps, then cakes will pop out, right? So same thing with refuah will pop out, knowledge will pop out, tshuva will pop out. You just got to like, engage the system.
Like another example that I like to use for myself, which makes it a little bit less personal, but also like similar to us, is like a plant.
Yes.
Like you give it enough sunlight, you give it the proper shade, you give it the proper soil, the proper pH, the proper water, and all that, and it flourishes.
Exactly, right. And that is Ratzon Hashem, because it's Ratzon Hashem not in the moment, it's Ratzon Hashem in how he designed the world, which is even more amazing, right? If God had to like, so to speak, cater to every individual request, that's like the wrong I'm saying when you throw a rock up and it falls, it's not God individually willing at it every second. It is the fact that God will from Sheshis Mei Beraishis is that rocks should fall when you drop them. And that's an even more astonishing thing because God doesn't need to change the individual things in order for it to go. Now, I want to just for disclaimer purposes, before I call you, for disclaimer purposes, at this point in the shiur, it's going to feel like we can't ask for God to change things, but we can. And that's going to be part of what I want to get to either later on tonight or for next time, okay? Because we definitely hold that by Hashgacha Pratis and by miracles and such, okay? And so that I don't want anyone to mistakenly think that what we've just said is the only way that Tefilah works. Yeah, David.
So there's also, I'm just getting a different feel from the second to last slide that you had with Tefilah. Okay.
This one?
Bottom, yeah. There also seemed to be my understanding of B'derech Adam Rotzalech, that there is some sort of, if you are then channeling into whatever this is, maybe that's part of like how the good is going to come to you, that there are external things that will then change, an alteration will result in this individual situation.
Right.
So there are other things that will then, and that's outside of you.
Right, that's true.
Outside things will then come.
Okay, that's true. And I think that is, that's why the natural examples like plants and stuff is really good, because when you, I was just thinking about this. This is kind of a weird example. I was just listening to a podcast about sleep and the relationship between getting enough sleep and predisposition for for Alzheimer's. And it was saying, what was it saying? Saying how the more deep sleep you get, then the more the brain is capable of doing stuff to fight off the chance of getting Alzheimer's, which I can't say the science, but where it's like one of these like self-reinforcing things where you engage the system in the right way and it's built to help you from the outside, not just from your internal values and stuff. So there's probably simpler examples. That was just the last thing I listened to right before I came here. You were saying something?
No.
Okay, yeah, Ariel?
Maybe.
Okay. So according to this way of learning, with Tefilah it seems like it's mostly on you.
Yeah.
Right. Just I know in the future we'll discuss.
So I'll tell you why it's mostly on you, because God did a whole lot to set you up for success. And maybe here's a simple analogy. If you want a simpler analogy, we're talking about goodness and barriers and blocking yourself. So what's the first thing that's called good? Light. Okay, right. So let's just use, I know that light is complicated, but let's say like you, there is a light, and you pull down, let's say there's light outside, and you pull down blackout shades, right? And you stumble around in your room, like trying to find stuff, and you complain about the way God designed the world, that he didn't give you light, So that's clearly dumb, because you just have to undo the blackout shade and the light is mimela there, So God has set everything up in an ideal way, both through the natural world and through hashgacha on Klal Yisrael, in terms of giving us the Torah and in terms of the your own design, etc., so that the good is going to just come to you as long as you engage it, to the extent that you engage it in the proper way. So see, I think what I'm saying is important, because I think that a person can also walk away from this model with the wrong emotional feelings about God, feeling as though we're just doing everything on our own. No, it's exactly the opposite. God is doing everything for you, and the only thing that's preventing you from getting it is you're blocking yourself with your stupidity, And if you remove that through mishlei and Tefilah, then you get the good stuff,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so what you just said was actually interesting, because like you have to you have to put yourself in the right framework to be able to kind of achieve.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a combination, right, of yourself and God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So this may not be a question. This how like I think the Gemara says there are certain things you shouldn't daven for, because like you'll become a kofar. Like one of them is what was it, like you pray for something that's impossible?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the statement that says you become a kofar, but I know it's usher to pray for something impossible. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'm just not familiar with that statement.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I'll show that to you later. The reason why was because it's something you'll ruin your philosophy with that.
Right.
According to this way of learning, I guess it would seem like it's more on you, but it's also God. But I guess
here's what I would.
So I'm wondering, like, if you do ask for something impossible according to this way of learning, like, is your assumption of Tefilah already messed up, or is it something else?
It would be like putting on more barriers.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my favorite analogy, which I slightly tweaked it from the Ralbag on Eov, but I got the idea from the Ralbag on Eov. Is the guy, I don't know if I've said this before, the guy with the yacht. So let's say you have a guy who wants a yacht. Okay, so he takes a shovel and he goes out into his backyard and he starts digging. Okay, and every day he's digging and he doesn't get a yacht, and then he digs in another spot and he doesn't dig, and then he finally digs up his whole yard, and then he blasphemes God and says, God, why did you not give me the yacht? Right. Yeah. So the Ralbag says that guy is not right to get mad at God, because that's not how yachts come about. Right. And so if you engage, there are ways to get yachts in God's world. If you do the right things, then yachts pop out. Okay. But if you engage the God's world, the hashgacha klalos, in the right way, then you'll get what you want. And so if you are engaging it to try to get something that is by definition impossible, then yeah, your tefillah is messed up from the get-go.
So it's like a premise thing. I mean, like putting this aside for a second, like this, and it's more of like understanding a separate point about tefillah in general. Yeah,
correct. Ayala?
Okay, I think I've asked and you've answered this question before, but I'll ask it again because I forgot. So is there a qualitative difference between this and tshuva? Because it sounds like it kind of is just tshuva in a different method.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and I'm glad that you asked it again, because this is the type of question that I feel like it pays to come back to. Okay, so one difference between this and tshuva is I don't know the answer to this. Yeah, you want to say?
You say that like teshuva requires some sort of purposeful deviation. Like, do you have to do teshuva for show games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
Well, isn't teshuva kind of like redeeming yourself. Like Tefilah isn't really redeeming yourself; it's putting more in the right frame.
Okay, I think that's on the right.
It's different though.
What was that?
It's different because your tshuva is rectifying a mistake, but Tefilah isn't rectifying anything.
Right.
Isn't it a form of mistake because
how is it
you have a wrong idea?
No,
you're saying that you're like an ones for having a wrong idea.
So the other version of this question, which might make things clear, is what's the different similar version of this question? What's the difference between tshuva and perfection in general, like perfecting yourself? You know, and so all of these things are going to be lumped under perfecting yourself. But tshuva is a specific activity that is in response to a chait that you've done or to a character flaw. Tefilah is more, the way I view Tefilah is it's more of a routine reality check, where you are 3 times a day going and doing a reality check in terms of judging yourself vis-a-vis God, in terms of who he is and who you are in his world. That's shavach. And then bakasha, which is what your needs are and how your needs are entirely dependent on him. And then hoda, which is how all of the good that you have comes from him and not from you, you know? And so that's not in response to, you're correct that we wouldn't need to feel if we didn't have flaws, but the prompt is it's avoda shebalev, that you're coming back to and doing this reality check on yourself, not prompted by a specific chait. But the processes will overlap. And I want to give the question some more thought. I think the most recent time we talked about this, Ayala, was when we talked about the psukim of Hashem Sefasai Tiftach and Yehu L'Ratzon. Those are both psukim that are associated with tshuva, and we bracket our Tefilah with them, and we said that there's a commonality between the two. But I want to think through it again. It's a good question, though. Yeah, Eli?
What you just mentioned about, which is spoken of a lot about, that Hudea and how, or Huda really, and that how it's putting all of it on, or recognizing that it all comes from God.
Yeah.
So going back to, I guess, that like analogy, that case, right, where that person is complaining, why is it dark? And then they should lift up the blinds. I mean, yeah. Of course, the light comes from God, but the actual action of lifting up the blinds and like working on yourself, don't you also have to like take that into account to some degree? Yeah.
So you definitely have to initiate it. And I think the most explicit place where we reference this in Tefilah is Hashibenu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva, is return us to Hashem and we will return. Although that's kind of standing in the opposite order, though, right? But that it needs to be a partnership, that you have to actually, like that's like what Chaim was saying, is that you actually have to make the decision to value this and gear your actions towards that end,
right?
In order for it to work.
Gives you something, you're not going to say, oh, like you're not going to your first line of action isn't going to be like, oh, you gave this to me because I deserve it. It's going to be more like gratitude towards that.
No, I don't think so. No, I think people do take credit for their own goods, or they don't give proper credit to Hashem. You know, right. They will think about, you know, let's say the human being who gave them the paycheck, or like, you know, the whatever, and that's all right. Stemming from a deep desire to deny that you're a created being. Right. I want to also just go back to what Chaim was saying, that I think that, I don't know if this is what you were getting at when you asked the question, but where is it? Oh yeah, b'masro libo machshavta le'otro. When you give over your heart and your plans to your creator, means that it has to reach the level where it's actually changing your plans, and you're submitting not just your emotions to these values and ideas, but your actual like way of life. Yeah.
And question, I remember, what was your question on the thing about not just you, but it's going to be your situation or something?
Okay, so it wasn't as much a question as much as exactly actually from over here.
Yeah, let me write this.
It seems like he's also saying that line, the bold line at the bottom.
Yeah.
And when your Tefilah is proper, change and alteration will also result around your situation. So it's not only something within you that's changed, or whatever is happening when you are with Tefilah. It's not just something within you, but there's also some externals that will then also align nicely to help you on your path.
Okay, so that was what I wanted to question. That was what I wanted to question before. Is that necessarily true? Like my favorite example was always like the Gemara about if you want money or wealth, you should daven facing the shulchan. If you want chachma, you should daven facing the menorah. And if you daven facing the menorah, if you daven for chachma, you'll end up getting both.
Right.
And like my understanding of that is not just because you're wise that you're going to now make a lot of money per se, but that you're going to have your ideals in a correct order. And now like Ezu Hoshea, like Hasameh B'Chalgo. So like to me, like that's maybe like the change and alteration in your situation. It's not necessarily that things are going to actually change around you, but that by changing your outlook on the things around you, now it's as if they change. So like, is it?
It could be both.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely could be both. And then what the example you're saying also is like, there are definitely cases where like there are limits to all change, tell how all change comes about. And so not every change is going to come out in the same way through your tefilah. Yeah. Okay. So now can we talk about Oren's question?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the question. Can we talk about Oren's question on its own, or do we have to do it through analyzing the bracha? I feel like we have to analyze the bracha. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with, so again, the next step in our game plan is to translate this, raise our questions, not answer them this time, but go into starting to explain what we mean when we say God answers tefilah or listens to tefilah. Okay, so Shema Koleinu Hashem Elokeinu. How do you translate that?
Listen to our voices, Hashem our God.
Yep, listen to our voices, Hashem our God. Yeah, chus is a little hard to translate. Yeah, so chus and compassion, pity, I don't know, compassion is probably a nicer sounding term, right, towards us. The kabel barachmim uvaratzon es tefiloseinu. Yeah, accept with mercy and favor our tefilah. Tikel shemea tefilos v'sachan and imata.
For the hearing God?
Yeah, I'd say for you are, you have to put the ata at the end, right?
Okay. For you are the God who listens to tefilah and supplications.
Right, you are the God who listens to tefilah and supplications.
We are empty.
Do not return.
Yeah, right. So from before you are king, do not turn us away empty-handed. And that's how Yoda would say it. We would say, do not turn us away from you empty-handed, our king. You know, okay, I'm using our nusach here, because you hear the tefilah of every mouth, right? I did a brief survey of the nuschos today. I think this is the majority. Well, not the majority is right, but Ashkenazim say, most Ashkenazim say tefilas amcha Yisrael barachamim, but I think most of them say tefilas kol peh, which is meaning it's not just about Israel.
Yeah, I know like Ari has that, and then
right.
has that,
yeah, and Rambam, yeah. Baruch Hashem. Trick question. What's the correct way to translate Baruch Hashem?
You are Hashem, or the source of all.
Yes, you are Hashem, or the source of all blessing. Shema Tefilah. Who hears Tefilah? Okay. So what are the questions? And I left a blank spot here to write down questions, additional questions. But yeah. I mean, the main question obviously is what, you know what? It doesn't even say answer tefilah here. So I should have typed this as listen to tefilah. Yeah.
Well, doesn't God always listen? Like what does it mean? Listen.
Okay.
Now.
Yeah.
Never listens.
Wait. Okay. Of the two options, the one that God always listens makes more sense to me. What do you mean by never listens? I think I know what you mean, but you just. Is that one going to be clipped for the Purim skit also? Yeah.
Well, one way, obviously, that God does do things in that sense.
Okay, yeah. All right.
So there's also the sense in which when you're davening, as was just explained, it's not that God is doing something, you're removing a barrier. God's not doing something to you.
Okay. All right. So
I mean, when I'm davening, I don't want God to listen to my tefillos. I want myself to remove my own barriers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds like you're answering the question.
Okay. No. Okay. So let me just break this down the way that both of you broke it down, which is very nice. Okay. Which is on the one hand, doesn't Hashem hear everything? Okay. On the other hand, chas v'shalom, that Hashem hears anything, right? He has no physical senses. He can't gain knowledge, right? Which would imply change, right? This makes me uncomfortable. Okay, right. So this is the problem that the Rambam is going to come in to solve. Okay, but at the end of the day, we do have to answer this question of what does it mean for Hashem to hear. Okay, I think these are like sub questions of that. Yeah, Ariel.
Well, I mean, if you go into the premise that davening is for ourselves, I mean, what does it mean that we're davening so that God can hear it if it's really for ourselves? It seems a little backwards.
Okay, can anyone elaborate on that question?
Okay, I can try to elaborate on my own question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Okay,
when you say I don't know who you mean anymore. You become he's more machine now than man. Yeah.
I wrote 2 letters with it. Okay.
Yes, I know.
Okay. Yeah. If you say that tefilah is for our own introspective, whatever compatible, whatever.
Yeah.
For ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So then, why, if we're already asking all these questions, all these requests,
yeah,
why is it necessary for us to ask God to listen to what we have to say if it's for ourselves when we really have
in other words like this. So tell me if this is the same question or different question, because there's at least two questions in here. Okay, one question I'm hearing is, the way we've explained bakasha so far, you shouldn't need to have this as a bakasha, meaning the very act of having a bakasha to Hashem should be sufficient.
It's redundant.
Yeah, so that's what you're saying was redundant.
It's like a meta.
Yeah, right. So isn't this redundant, right? Meaning shouldn't our bakashos be sufficient in and of themselves, right? Yeah, in other words, we shouldn't need this separate thing, okay? Yeah, Tamar?
Is this dependent on the framework and the whole explanation that we have until this point? I think that's a question you could ask even on like a really simple level.
Yeah, you could ask this on a simple level also. That's true, right? But I think it's a stronger question the way we have it. Yeah, Isaiah?
Just another, what does it mean that it's specifically rachamim or chus?
Okay, yeah. So
to listen to our
right. So
prayers?
what is the difference between chus and it's not switching over. Let's do it again. And chus, right? Okay, good. Oh, sorry. Corporate wants you to find the difference between these two. Yeah. All right. Okay, good. Yeah, Ali. Oh, yeah.
Just to clarify the question a little bit. Like, why is Hashem answering our prayers either chus or rachamim? It just seems
okay. All right. And
prayer, right? He should answer our prayers.
Okay, right. And why characterize his answers with these two terms? Okay, Ellie?
When we ask that God not leave us empty-handed, isn't that kind of implied by very nature of praying to begin with, that we don't want to be left empty-handed?
Okay, I'm going to actually ask this I'm going to shove a bunch of questions into one, which is, if you notice, there are three things we're asking for, okay? Listening to Tefilah or hearing Tefilah, accepting our Tefilah, and then not turning us away empty-handed.
The first two seem to cover that.
Right. So the question is, what is not turning us away empty-handed? Like, what's the difference between those three, basically? Okay, right. But still, the last one seems to be the most redundant, or in a way. Yeah, what do they all mean? Yeah. Okay. So let's say, what? Yeah, asking questions. That's why Mishlei trains you in thinking in every way. Okay, what is the difference between? This is really kind of a sub question on number one, but whatever. Between Shema, my switchy thing is not working. Shema and Kabel, and you can even tell it's going slower. And what's the phrase? Rekam al tishivenu. Rekam al tishivenu. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oren?
If the whole point of davening in general is to remove my own barriers for myself, then to speak in extremes, I don't care whether or not God hears me or not.
Okay, right. Okay, good. All right, so
that's my question, but intense.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So all right. So yeah. It's very interesting. This is an interesting. It's hard to tell whether these are different questions or facets of the same question, but I think they are worth expressing in each of these ways. Okay, which is, say it one more time. You said it really well.
If the whole point of davening is to get rid of my own barriers, then to speak in extremes, I don't care whether God hears me or not.
Yeah. What difference does it make if whether God hears me or not? I feel like this is have an angry face. Yeah.
What's the reason to mention Kikel from
Okay, good. Yeah. And I think that also poses another problem. Okay, so why mention ki kel shomea tefilos v'tachanunim? Right. What's the problem? I think that like there's the question. There's the she'ela of why mention it, but I think there's a problem with this also.
We're not doing tachanunim right now.
Okay, that's a minor question.
It's a strange descriptor of God.
Okay, that's true also. Yeah. I think this is an intrinsic problem. Yeah, Tamar?
If this is just something that God does, then maybe we don't need to ask for it.
Yeah, right? If God really is a Shema Tefilah, then we don't need to ask for it, okay, right? If this is really true, why do we ask for it? Okay, yeah. And then similarly, I have this other question. Yeah?
That is that could be asked on other bakashas as well, though, right? Like Rafa'inu, Kikel, yep, that one.
So on the surface, yes, but I feel like this is different, right? Like, it might mean, okay, so Shema can sometimes mean to hear and sometimes means to listen, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we also have to figure out whether it means to hear or to listen, because if it's hear, then the very fact that you're asking it presupposes that God is hearing you, right? And whereas with the Rafa'enu thing, the fact that God is a Rofe doesn't presuppose that he is healing you. I think that's the difference. But if it means listen, then it is like Rofe. Mm-hmm. Cool. You see what I'm saying?
I think so.
What?
Can you go back to the bracha? So we can ask.
Yeah. Hold on, I just want to tack another question onto this one. I think this is the same question, which is, I'll say alternatively. Do we need a bakasha of Shomei Tefilah? Wait, of Shomei, sadly, no. Shomei Tefilah. No. For Shomei Tefilah, right? Like, what if God doesn't hear this bakasha? Right? So do we need another one? And then bakasha's all the way down, So like it's that's another like circularity of redundancy. Yeah. Speaking like Chazal, yeah.
It's like benching on Kos.
Yeah.
Benching for Geffen.
Yeah.
That's
Ayala?
Are you able to elaborate on the difference that you were saying about like if Hashem hears or listens?
Yeah. Okay, so Chaim's question was, the original question was, or tomorrow's, okay, whoever asked question 6 was, David's question, right? Why do we need to say, because you are the God who listens to Tfilos? And then tomorrow's clarification of that is, if that were true, then we wouldn't need to ask this. And then Chaim said, well, we ask God to heal us, and then we say, because you are a healer. So how's this different from that? So I'm suggesting that if Shomea means to hear, and God is not hearing us, then us saying something is not going to be heard, and therefore there's no point in it, right? Then we have a real problem. But if we're talking about listening, which means like paying attention, taking into consideration, whatever that mushal is, so then it would be similar to the Rofe thing, where just because God does this in general, doesn't mean he's going to do it right now. So we still need to ask him for it. Does that clarify things? Okay. Any other questions?
You have any questions?
I have any questions? I have minor questions, like why do we invoke God as Melech here? Or just like we asked, what is Klus Barachim? Why Rachamim and Ratzon? I'm not going to list them because they're minor, but and we don't have a lot of space here. Yeah, Tamar.
I don't know if this is a productive question in this context, but I kind of want to ask, what is the subject of the bracha?
Okay, that's a good question also. Always a good question. Rabbi Moskowitz, his favorite question. What is the subject of the bracha?
I got another question.
Yeah.
Is this bracha more important than the other brachas?
Right. Yeah. I guess, let's actually ask that question, which is, actually, where do we put this? Let's put this here, which is, what is the relationship between this bracha and all, and all the other, I'm almost tempted just to do this in transliterated. See, it doesn't not working and other brachos. Yeah. In other words, like if you mess up on this one, let's say, right, or if God doesn't answer this one, then that would seem to imply that he doesn't listen to all the other stuff you said. Yeah, David.
He seems really jumpy for his question. I could wait.
Okay. Okay. Well, the jumpier question gets the yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I was thinking similarly, like, why is this the last of the percussions?
Yeah.
Like, if anything, like I'm saying, I don't have an argument for why it's the last per se.
Yeah.
But I can see an argument for why it should be the first.
Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah.
Like, God, please listen to all our percussions, and here they are.
Yeah, right. Because if he wasn't listening before, you know, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Hooks up now.
Oh, yeah.
That one.
Yeah. David.
What grounds are we proposing that God act on our behalf here?
Say again.
What grounds are we proposing that God act on our behalf?
Yeah.
Acting, listening, hearing, whatever it is. What are we saying is the reason God should be doing any of that?
Okay, so in the Tefilah, the reason we're saying it is ki kel shemei Tefilas v'safan ata.
So that has
right?
nothing to do with us. That's only within God knows.
Seemingly, yeah. Yeah, seemingly, yeah. Yeah. Although chus and rachim, well, actually, that also implies that it's not really our merit, right?
Yeah. But also, if you're going to make a differentiation between Tefilah and Tachanunim, then with Tachanunim being like we don't deserve this at all, and Tefilah having something else different than that,
right?
We're defining Tefilah here again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, I'll list my questions.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why, but I for some reason remember that there was a bracha and Shema Esrei that was like added on.
It's not this one. It's because of minim.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I was wondering.
Yeah. Versus ratzon. Okay. Isaiah, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
It was fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Do I have any more questions? Oh yeah, I said the Melech one, right? Question number 9 is why Melech? Yeah.
Let's take a picture of this before.
Okay. You know, this is
Can we go back to the previous line?
As soon as the photographer is
I'm finished.
okay. Yeah.
I was gonna. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting. We may have said this already, but we also say at the end, don't turn us away empty-handed because you are the
Shemei Tefilas Kol Peh.
Because you are the Shemei Tefilas. Like, what's that relation? Like, what's that relationship there?
All right, that's also true, right?
Like, does that mean that like it's like a necessity that because God hears it, then he should? That's why he shouldn't turn us away empty-handed?
Right. I'm just gonna insert that here and key. What do we say? Ki atash Shemei Tefilas Kol Peh. Ki atash Shemei Tefilas Kol Peh. Yeah. Ki ata. Ta Shomea Tefilas Kol Peh. Yeah. All right. I think this is probably a good stopping point for tonight, right? Because now we have 3 times 7 is 20. No, 3 times 6 is 18. We have 18 Shemona Esreis between now and next week,
and including tonight.
To think about this for. Not that you need to think about it only when you say Shemona Esrei, but yeah. Okay, good. I think these are good questions. And so the agenda. So just to show you where we are at on the agenda, that we outlined above. So we've done this. And we have we've assessed whether this answers the questions, and we've determined that we need to go into Shema Koleinu in order to fully answer Oren's question. And so next time, Bleenetter, we're not going to start off by answering the questions. We'll start off by answering what it means to answer Tefilah and to listen to Tefilah and to hear Tefilah from the Rambam, and then proceed from there.
I can send the pictures out if you guys want the questions.
Sure.
Okay.
I would like that picture.
Okay.
I'm saying
I'll put
just post it in my discussion chat, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh man, this is slowing down.
Too slow to let you exit out.
Yeah, I know.